Every so often, within the Bleach community, someone drops the question, when will Ichigo become a captain? Or worse, Ichigo should be head captain by now. So look, I get it, we're conditioned by decades of shonen anime and manga to expect our protagonist to climb up this hierarchical ladder, to reach the top or to become the number one of whatever they are doing. But here's the thing when it comes to Bleach, expecting Ichigo to become captain or head captain fundamentally misunderstands how Kubo has crafted this character. This isn't me being contrarian for the sake of it, the evidence is woven into every story arc of Bleach, every decision that Ichigo makes, and every time that he rejects the trappings of the Soul Society's power structure. First, let's address the elephant in the room, and it's the way that typical shonen protagonists are written. Luffy from One Piece wants to become the Pirate King, Naruto spent over 700 chapters chasing the position of Hokage, and Goku's entire existence revolves around fighting progressively stronger opponents in his quest to fight the strongest of them all. These are not criticisms, because these goals work brilliantly for their respective stories. They give the narrative a clear endpoint, a measurable progression system. Fans can point to any moment and gauge how close the protagonist is to their respective dream. But when it comes to Ichigo, he never wanted any of that. Not once in the entirety of the 686 chapters of Bleach does he express a desire for a title, a position, or for recognition from others. And this wasn't an oversight from Kubo, it's the entire point of his character. When Rukia first forces him to take her place as a substitute Shinigami in those very early chapters of Bleach, Ichigo straight up tells her he won't always be ready to sacrifice his life for strangers. He's helping because he owes her for sharing her power with him. That is it, there's no grand declaration about I'm going to protect all of the Soul Society, or like Eren from Attack on Titan, I'm going to kill every single last hollow. And no, he doesn't even want to become the strongest Shinigami. This immediately sets Ichigo apart. The typical shonen protagonist accepts the call to adventure with enthusiasm, but with Ichigo being more relatable, like a typical rebellious teenager, he reluctantly accepts his duty, only because it impacts people that he actually cares about, his family, his friends. This is the limit of Ichigo's world, and he's not apologetic about it. Ichigo is a regular 17-year-old kid who lives a human life and has human aspirations. He goes to school, he worries about grades, he has a family he needs to support emotionally after his mother's death, and these are not minor details that Kubo throws in for flavor, they are the foundation of his character. Him sitting in a captain's office reviewing paperwork, attending Gote 13 meetings where captains debate amongst themselves, managing barracks full of subordinates, having Central 46 breathing down his neck about every decision, this is just so unappealing to the character of Ichigo, and it's against everything that he represents. Ichigo could absolutely pass the captain's exam if he wanted to. He has a Bankai, which immediately qualifies him. He could get recommendations from 6 captains easy. I mean, this includes Rukia, Byakuya, Kenpachi, Hitsugaya, Shunsui, and Shinji. I'm sure all of them would vouch for him in a heartbeat, and he after all did save the Soul Society twice, so strength isn't the issue, qualification isn't either. The problem is that Ichigo doesn't want it, and more importantly, being a captain would make him miserable. Let's break down what being a captain actually entails, because I don't think people really think about this. You're responsible for an entire division of Shinigami. You have administrative duties, you attend mandatory meetings, you answer to the Central 46, the same group that was easily manipulated by Aizen, who had issued an execution order on the holified Shinigami during the Ten Back the Pendulum arc, and these guys were responsible for exiling Tessai and Urahara from the Soul Society. And remember, they also stopped Kenpachi's training with Yamamoto because they'd feared that he'd turn against them one day. The Soul Society's power structure is designed to limit and restrict Shinigami. This is so that they don't pose a threat to the noble families or the status quo that is being established by the higher up. It's a system that Ichigo fought against during the Soul Society arc. This doesn't align with Ichigo as he's constantly defying orders of the Soul Society. He invaded Hueco to save Orihime against orders, and he got involved with the battle against Aizen despite the Soul Society believing that they were capable of handling him. There's a reason why Urahara and Yoruichi rejected returning as captains after the war ended. They tasted freedom and they could work independently, pursue their own goals, and make decisions without committee approval. Ichigo is in the same boat, except he never experienced what it's like to be a captain in the first place. He's always been a substitute Shinigami, this official title making him an outsider, the guy who shows up when things go catastrophically wrong and then disappears back to his normal life during times of peace. What makes Ichigo so relatable in a way that most shonen protagonists aren't is that he doesn't have his life figured out. During the Fullbring arc, he admits that he doesn't know what he wants to do after school. This is real. Most 17-year-olds don't know what they want to do with their life. They're not supposed to know. The pressure to have your entire life mapped out at that age is frankly absurd. But here's what Ichigo does know. He wants to protect the people that he loves. He doesn't want to protect just the Soul Society or to maintain the balance of the three worlds as some cosmic responsibility. He just wants to protect his friends, family, and the handful of people whose well-being actually matters to him. This is why the Soul Society arc works so well. Ichigo doesn't invade to uphold some principle about justice or to prove to himself that he's the strongest Shinigami. He invades because Rukia, someone who gave him the power to protect his family, is about to be killed because she shared her powers with him, and this is unacceptable to him. Compare this to Ichigo coming out and saying, I want to become head captain of the Soul Society or the president of the United States. It just sounds so absurd applying this grandiose ambition to a character like Ichigo. Think if Ichigo was in charge and there came a point where he had to make a tough decision, like sending one of his subordinates to their deaths for a strategic advantage, I don't think he'd be able to do this. Yamamoto and Shunsui are able to make calls like this because they've lived for centuries and developed that cold calculus. Ichigo on the other hand won't be able to. He wouldn't send Chad, Orihime or Uryu into danger. Instead, he'd take it on himself, and this is actually a bad leadership quality. But this is who Ichigo is as a character. And not to mention all of the paperwork, reports, and personnel management. We know that his dad Ishin dumped all of the paperwork on Hitsugaya, who was his lieutenant at the time. The Shiba family doesn't seem to mesh well with administrative responsibilities. It's clear that they are fighters and protectors and people who act on instinct and emotion. Putting Ichigo behind a desk would be like caging a wild animal. Even characters close to Ichigo understand this about him. Even during the Can't Be Unworld light novels, the villain Tokinada proposed that Ichigo could become the new head of the Shiba clan, but Yoruichi immediately shut the idea down, explaining to him that Ichigo wouldn't be interested in such matters. The people who actually know Ichigo understand his personality and desires, and how they don't align with these big titles or institutional power. So ultimately, what does Ichigo want? It's gonna sound really simple, but this is the truth. Ichigo just wants to live his life like an ordinary human. He wants to finish school, get a job, maintain relationships with his friends and family. He wants normalcy. The Shinigami powers are a tool that lets him protect that normalcy, not a career path. He's juggling his life as a Shinigami in one hand and his regular life as a citizen within Karakura Town in the other. When the threats are dealt with, Ichigo goes home. He works as an English translator. He's not lingering about in the Soul Society hoping for recognition or advancement. He doesn't train obsessively to become the strongest for strength's sake, and thanks to his unique heritage, he is strong enough to typically handle whatever threat is presented to him. After the big bad is defeated, he just returns back to his actual life. This is what makes him so relatable. Most people don't want to be the president or CEO or the strongest in the world. They just want to be comfortable, surrounded by people they love, and doing something that gives them purpose. And Ichigo's purpose is to protect his inner circle as well as his love for Shakespeare, which had led him down that path of being an English translator. And this is enough for him, and for most people, it's enough for us too. Ichigo never becoming a captain makes Bleach a better story than if he had followed the typical shonen progression of a protagonist. It gives a narrative nuance. It allows Kubo to explore what heroism looks like for someone who isn't chasing a title or for recognition of others. Ichigo saves the world multiple times and gets nothing in return. There's no promotion, no statue of him being made, and he's fine for that because he's not doing it for that reason. Ichigo's selflessness and his lack of ego makes him a more compelling protagonist than if he was chasing the head captain position. It also lets Bleach criticize institutional power in ways that other shonen manga can't. Naruto wanting to become Hokage, on the other hand, validates the system. It suggests that if you work hard enough, you can rise through the ranks and fix things from within. Ichigo rejects that path entirely, as he suggests that maybe the system itself is the problem. Maybe working outside of it, maintaining independence, is the best option. Ichigo isn't going to become captain or head captain because he's not supposed to. That was never his character arc. Expecting him to follow the path of Luffy or Naruto misses everything that Kubo was doing with his character. And usually people who have takes like this have issues with the Fullbring arc, a story arc centered around the character progression of Ichigo. But because it focused too much on character writing and it didn't have enough fights, people's monkey minds turned off and they thought that the Fullbring arc was the weakest portion of the story. Ichigo is a grounded and relatable protagonist, someone who just wants to lead an ordinary life, and honestly it's refreshing to see in the shonen genre. We don't always have to be following characters who are chasing this #1 spot, or going down the path of the hero's journey. Because something as simple as fighting to hold on to everything that you love can be equally as compelling. Now we have reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about Ichigo not becoming a captain or a head captain by the end of Bleach? Do you agree with the conclusions that I made within this video? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this one, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.